Cloud. This is maybe what I'll do.
There we go. I like also how all the videos went off, or most of the videos went off. I love that.
Which is totally cool with me. Totally fine. Okay, cool. Well, we are recording to the cloud, and yeah, we'll get started here. So Efrem Zelony-Mindell, they, them, is an artist, writer, and curator whose work re-examines how we think about photographic relations, queerness, the body, and, well, mostly anything we feel like we might know for sure. Their ability to expand, shift, flip, and shake that which we often accept as the truth or the norm is exactly why I have invited them into this space to be in dialogue with you all. Many of you have expressed frustrations, concerns, and anxieties around topics such as the critique, the art world, notions of success, the validity of your voice, and 2020 has certainly made all of us reconsider how we might navigate art and everything else differently. So thank you, Efrem, for being here and sharing this dialogue with us. I'm going to start off. Oh, also, I wanted to say to everyone, please make use of the chat, unmute yourself, butt in, interrupt, also interpret, as much as you would like. Efrem and I have a tendency to get going on something and sort of rock it off into space. But this is really a discussion for you all, with you all. So please engage.
Wait, can I just piggyback off of that?
Please.
No disrespect to me or to Eileen, but this totalitarian thing where where Eileen and I are talking to you and you are listening to us, I understand the need for it, but please, I just wanted to really drive home, please do interrupt us, and you know, don't be shy. If you have a brick that you want to hurl that brick, or if you want a curtain removed because you have a question about something that seems like the mysteries of what it is that we do, or that this industry is, or that this profession is, I would love to rip that curtain down for you all. So please do interrupt us.
Thanks,
what were you saying, Eileen?
Yeah. So I'm just going to start us off with a couple of questions before we jump into what you called my dissertation. Efrem, can you talk about how you work as a curator and how this is different or might be different than how other curators might work?
I've never sat down at a round table with other curators. How do you do this? But I don't know that. I want to be careful with how I answer that question, but to me, what I appreciate about the way that I think about curating is it starts with my background trained as an artist. You know, the BFA that I have is from the School of Visual Arts, where I studied photography. That's what I majored in. And if that institution gave minors, it would be in art history or fine art. And I really. And this is actually a thing that I've recently been thinking about, and I want to admit my insecurity in saying this, but I feel like my curatorial practice is a fine art practice, really. I feel lucky enough to come up with crazy ideas, and other crazy artists are willing to share their work with me to visualize that crazy idea that I have. And if that's not what we do when we're in our studios making our work, I don't know what is. So in a lot of ways, I do still think of myself as an artist. I don't think of myself as an administrator or something like that. As fine as that is, and as noble as that is, I don't want to, you know, say that, whatever. Does that answer your question?
Totally, yeah. Well, and it also answers question 9, which was just in case we for some reason didn't have anything to talk about, which was, you know, how does your art practice feed into your curatorial practice, feed into your writing practice, etc. How does this ecosystem kind of function for you? And I love the way that you described, you know, the way that ideas come together in a studio, or how an art practice works, and that is really how your ideas in other forms take shape. And I think it's often what is lacking from curatorial practices, where I see a lot of curators that I feel like we could just replace with people with good taste, you know, that there's this idea that putting together, you know, similar things is the practice.
Yeah. And you saying that actually, you know, it's been really, I feel really lucky for many reasons, but one of those reasons is I've really worked hard to look at what I do the way that I look at someone else's work. And I've really gotten to a place where I can see what I do from a third-party perspective so that I can really allow it to adapt where it needs to adapt, not where I necessarily want it to go, but like what it is that it needs to get to the bigger picture of what its potential is. And, you know, my journey, I feel I'm really lucky that I'm not like a classically trained curator or a classically trained writer or a classically trained necessarily anything, although you could arguably say that I'm a classically trained photographer. But my progression has been so wonderful to experience because it's been so unexpected. I've sort of fallen into roles, and I don't mean to diminish the accomplishment of what I've done or how I've done it, but a lot of the things that I've done, it's because I asked for what I wanted, and then suddenly I found myself with another title on my resume. I mean, you know, now I can say that I'm a book editor. I never sought out, I never purposefully thought I want to be a book editor. And there's a lot of privilege there. There's a lot of privilege that I've been able to navigate these spaces and these people that have helped me, which is another thing that I think I should acknowledge. I've been very lucky to work with other people and recognize other people and ask them to collaborate or for help, or can you point me in the right direction? And, you know, I think that's really sort of taken me to the place where I'm at right now, sitting in front of all of you folks, answering questions.
I want to touch on a couple of things there. Like one, I think that some of the communities and people you're able to meet, and the reason you're able to sort of come into those roles is because your network isn't just photographers, it isn't just painters, it isn't just any of these things, that you're really plugged into many different types of people who do different types of work. And again, that, like you said, it's not to diminish, you know, the work that you've done to get into those positions, but I think what you said about just asking for what you want is so true. And that when I met you, it was so refreshing to speak to someone that wasn't trying to please me, that I didn't feel like I was trying to please them, that we just were having this conversation, this really honest, very real conversation, building off of one another. And that when you and I speak and talk about things, that I feel that, you know, and this may be maybe more or less true, but that your boundaries of what you are not going to do for certain people are pretty strong, but that the lines that we draw in the dirt for ourselves of what we are and what we are not, and what we are capable of, what we are not capable of, that you don't have any of those lines. You're just sort of moving around saying like, well, yeah, I mean, sure, let me think about that. Let me try that. And that you're bringing all of the experience that you have from all different kinds of places to each one of those.
I appreciate. I want to I really appreciate you saying that. But I do want to acknowledge that it's pretty human. I do have lines. But one of the things that I'm really grateful that I push myself to do is I do start with lines, or there are sometimes lines, but I find myself caught up in those lines, and my dedication is even more in those moments where I catch myself in lines, or I catch myself becoming complacent. I realize, no, let's do this in reverse. Let's totally break this. Let's totally think, how can I come to the same result, but from a totally different angle?
Yes. Can we talk about the way that feels, both in terms of how uncomfortable it might initially be, and how do we, or you or I, maintain momentum in those moments of coming through something through the inverse? What supports that in our lives?
Oh, that's a really great question. I was just listening to Marilyn Manson before this to get hyped up for it, and I think that's how I'm going to begin to easily answer that question. I was a freak growing up and very supported on being who I wanted to be. And I say freak with the knowledge that, I have it tattooed on the top of my hand. I feel very lucky that my discomforts are something that have always really driven me to push harder and push deeper and to push more. When I see the deep end, I want it. When I feel myself starting to become complacent and shallow, I feel really bored. And as my father would say, if you're bored, it's because you're a boring person. I want the deep end. I really do. There's so much more space for exploration and curiosity and uncertainty, which motivates me as an artist to try things and fail at things, or to succeed at things. And in the deep end, there's so much fucking space. I can totally understand how that's really intimidating, though, because it is, because there seems to be like no rules in that moment, right?
Yes, well, and when we first go there, right, like it's pretty individual, our getting there. No one's really with us yet, and our ideas aren't formed yet, and we're swimming around in there. And I think one of the biggest fears, especially I would say in an academic setting, like with these students working on their projects, to go there and not have anything to show yet that you're in that work feels really wrong, right? It feels wrong to it's like, oh, I don't have my 10 photos for crit, or I don't have these things because I took this dive all the way down to this place. And so it's like, it involves a lot of trust in your process. And you are someone that has so much, kind of experience doing that. Let's see what JB says. Using your discomfort to push yourself and exceed what you want to do really stuck out when you talked about that. Taking the first step through your discomfort is definitely hard, but can open doors to new exploration. A hard step for me. Yeah, how can we encourage people to come over to the deep end?
Well, I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said, because I don't think that there's absolutely any reason why any students, I don't care what level they're at, well, I can understand hesitation, absolutely, but I don't think that this is totally just locked into, when we're thinking about our projects and our assignments and our professors. But why can't we think about showing our work to like photo editors or independent curators, or when we see open calls or things like that? Why do, students think that like we're not ready for that? So I'm sorry, I got a little lost. Repose.
No, that's okay. Well, you're kind of taking it to the next step. So I'm like sitting in the place where, before the work is even kind of being made, that all of that storm and things that kind of happen as the work starts to, become something vibrating within us that we need to then explore. It feels really daunting to even get to that place, I think, sometimes. And the fear within it, I think, has a lot to do with, and will start to creep upon my dissertation here, has a lot to do with the fact that modes of production and labor in this world of academia or other worlds kind of require that you have this thing to show that it is of this caliber, to make your ideas or voice valid. And so we're sitting in the place, the question is more so about how do we maybe shut some of those things down for now and invite students, or even ourselves, take those first steps into that deep end.
Because we don't know what we're making. And as difficult as that is, it's also, I'll speak for myself. The first time I ever painted on a canvas, I feel like I had this moment exactly. The teacher told me to get the specific paints and to get whatever size canvas I wanted, and I brought it all back to the classroom. And yeah, a blank canvas, whether it's actually painting or anything, your photography, you don't know what it is that you want to shoot. In that moment, I realized I could put anything I wanted on this blank thing. And I was like, in that exact moment, I realized that I could either be really intimidated by that, or I could realize that in all likelihood, this canvas was going to be an awful piece of shit, excuse me. And that I was gonna have to just be okay with that. and that I should probably just start pushing around these materials that I had no knowledge of and start making a mess and start really paying attention to that mess that I was trying to make and what was successful about that mess or what wasn't working about that mess. And that's something that I really believe in. There's lots and lots of time afterwards to engineer a thing and to really find what it is that you're doing, but playing and making a mess, it's so important to dedicate to that uncertainty. And that in the moment, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's a thing that I talk to people about also when I talk about writing with artists or other writers. You know, I think that there's this really big concept that the first time you write something, it has to be perfect, right? And that applies to all art. We think that the first time that we make something, it has to be perfect. And it's like, that's not how that works. That's not how it works at all. I think that we get really locked in, you know, we're alone in our studios or for the most part in our heads thinking about our work. And we think it's got to be right the first time it comes out because it goes right from my studio or my head right onto the wall. And it's like, this is the second that it leaves your studio, actually, this becomes a group activity and no longer an individual activity. So we need to give ourselves that space to make that mess and to really be focusing on what isn't working and why do we feel that it's not working, or what is working and why do we feel that it is working. And that's the best way, that works for me at least anyways, to really sort of get more comfortable with the deep end, that deep end, or that limitless possibility. And oh my God, you know, it could be anything. I could do anything.
Yeah, this is so important. And thank you for that. You said it in a much more eloquent way than I think I've been attempting to say it all semester to these students. And I also want to acknowledge to everyone that Efrem gave me this exact pep talk a week ago, because I was sitting in this place where I have made work, I have shown work, things have left my studio and lived in the world. And I have not, that process hasn't really happened for me very much recently. And I was so terrified to make anything again. And Efrem was like, honey, do we have to go back to square one here? Like, come on.
Well, it's a thing that we continue to struggle with, you know? That blank canvas is going to happen absolutely every single time that you try to make something.
Every time, and I love that you said paying attention to the mess. I've been really gravitating towards this word, noticing, lately. Like the idea of what happens when we begin to just notice something and not notice it and then conceptualize it and theorize it and write an artist statement about it, or notice it and make it our identity, but just begin noticing it. And that then you have some kind of pattern or some stuff to kind of work with, that like the next time you go to the blank canvas, you can notice this thing you did last time and think about whether you want to, you know, run with that this round or leave it behind, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I wanted to say one other thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask everybody to use the reactions. Oh my God, this is so cool. This is the first time I've ever asked a Zoom class.
Wait, does everyone know how do you do that?
So at the bottom, there are the 5 little things, and on the right, it says reactions, and there's a clap or a thumbs up. If you like roller coasters, give me a thumbs up. Roller coasters? Only 4, come on. Roller coasters? Okay. Anyways, it doesn't matter whether all of you or none of you. Excellent. 4 of you really love roller coasters. I fucking hate roller coasters. I hate them. But what I do really like is talking to strangers at gallery openings. And to me, that is absolutely an equivalent. And I think that again, trying to think about how to approach that uncertainty and how to approach that getting excited about the deep end is like that. You know, it's making these associations and pushing ourselves to recognize that even though it makes us uncomfortable, what things do we do that other people might see as uncomfortable? Or what things do we do that leave us feeling out of control, but we really enjoy doing them? building these associations with these activities, whether it is talking to strangers at galleries or making our work or trying new things, making these associations. I mean, that dumb, silly roller coaster bit, I really felt a huge, I mean, I'm very grateful to have that realization and also that association, and to be able to share that and interact and see, because I really do. All four of you that put your thumbs up for roller coasters, you freaks. I would never do that in a million years, but I would talk to literally every single person at a gallery opening because it just thrills me. I just think it's the most exciting thing, the most out of control thing. And I totally think that that also applies to, you can apply that to anything. Any of these things that we're talking about, I think that you can apply to really anything, whether it be art or life or anything like that. But that's also me getting very big and idealistic.
Right, which is okay.
Wrangle me, baby.
I'm wrangling you. So I want to come back also to this this idea, you know, that things are made in a studio and then they walk out the studio door. Somehow they've grown their own legs and they enter in a gallery and it's perfect and beautiful. And that part of, I think, the reason that we have this, that there's this pressure, right, that we don't feel like we could play or pay attention to the mess, I think has something to do with the fact that we have not yet really, as a culture, I don't think fully demystified the idea of the artist in the studio and the work in the gallery space. And that if we can continue to break down and kind of pull the curtain, as you say, the space between how those things happen, I think especially this year, I mean, here we are sitting at home, we're in our home studios, we're not leaving our houses, and all we see is, you know, work flying around on the internet. Oh, that person's interview, this work there. And we're thinking to ourselves, God, oh, my work's never going to get, you know, oh, they just aren't able to do this. But like you said, you know, this is my diagram. Studio to wall, simple but not. That we think that space between is like whatever it is. And
yeah,
then
I was going to say that space in between is a mess.
Yeah, totally. And can we talk about that a little bit more, you know?
Sure. In what regard? I mean, there's just so many places to start. I think that, I think it starts with us as individuals, to be completely honest. You know, I want to be in a Gagosian gallery. Eileen, you want to be in a Gagosian gallery. I'm sure every single one of us wants to be in a Gagosian gallery, right? They file $1 billion a year in taxes. That's what we want. It's the dream. But unfortunately, I seriously doubt that any of us are ever going to be represented by a Gagosian gallery. And that's okay, because exhibiting work or getting represented by a gallery or having, it is a challenge, absolutely. I'd love to be wrong. Please prove me wrong. Getting into an exhibition or getting represented by a gallery or even getting your work, getting interviewed and having your work seen online is about us doing the work and building that a kind of honesty with ourselves that takes a lot of work. Because there are spaces for each and every single one of us to find a place. To find a place to show our work, to find a place where people will believe in our work, for people who will promote our work. But that honesty is really fucking difficult because we want Gagosian Gallery, we want that dream thing. So it's about doing the homework and putting in the time to really identify and find spaces that we fit in, where we will bring something as much as they will bring something to us. It's got to be a reciprocal relationship in that way.
Yes. What is I can't remember who said it, but I don't want to be a part of any club that doesn't want me as a member. You know, this idea too, that like what you're talking about of like what we bring and what that idea group brings to us too, that the idea of support is so much more than I'm going to show your work in this show, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, and doing that homework, really researching a place or a writer or a curator or a whatever, and figuring out not only not only who you want to be working with and who will bring you something as much as you'll bring them something, but also starting to make yourself present to that person or that place. You know, become a part of, you know, I know we can't do this right now because of, you know, COVID, but if you want to participate with a gallery, start going to that gallery and don't ask for anything the first time you go. This is a long con game. You know, there's lots of different ways to do this, but this is like a, you know, this is a very slow and steady uprising profession. And, you know, some people get to do it like this, but when you're here, you got to get really smart, because otherwise you're going to crash.
Can we talk about what it takes to have the kind of resilience when showing up to that space and being rejected? You know, how can we? I don't ever have the answer for this, you know, because it just sucks every time.
Well, like I said, the first few times you don't say anything. You go to the gallery opening and you look around and you see who's there, and you identify who the gallery owner is, and you identify who the gallery associate is, and maybe you identify if that gallery can afford having more staff than that. You identify maybe who other staff members are. But this is a slow research sort of game. Or go online and look up faces and figure out who people are and whose people's names are, so that, you know, the third time that you go, or the fourth time that you go, or the fifth time that you go, you get a glass of wine, you can say to the person who's pouring the wine, oh, hey, you're whoever, you're the whatever. This is a great show. How's your day going? And you just start a small conversation. And I mean, that's been my experience. This slow progression of approaching people in small ways at first, and building and building and building. I love the idea of cultivating someone by not asking for anything. Not asking for anything is a really good way to cultivate somebody. And as you expose yourself to each other, you can start to communicate more, and you can start to do more with each other. And then when you become comfortable enough with each other, you can say, could I show you my work? Are there opportunities that are available? Would you be interested in writing about my work? I'd love for you to write about my work. That's another thing that I'd really like to say. I think that, you know, like approaching a writer, you've got to, we like seeing that you know who we are. And I like showing to a writer that I know who they are. So in that cold email, or in that cold contact, or when you first finally do start talking to each other, you know, make sure you've read some work, or you've gone and see some shows. So you're not just like talking out of your ass, but you're able to say, oh, that piece that you wrote about Eileen, it was so wonderful. There was that one sentence or that idea that really moved me, and I always find myself coming back to your writing. That means a lot to people, and it's a small gesture that, if you mean it genuinely because you've actually put in the work, really will resonate with somebody, and will stick with them, and will be like, you know what, you're not an asshole, and I want to work with you. Well, that's the biggest thing that everybody wants, to not work with assholes.
Totally.
Assholes should be everyone's goal here.
And I think too that, like, when you're able to have like that, what you're talking about, that the research or the work, what it creates is a space where, look, you at least know a little bit about someone's identity or who they might be associated with by looking at other things that they've done. And when you come to that space, you aren't just pointing at this person saying, I'd like you because of their compliments. You're saying, I like you because you actually seem like a person that, like, you're a type of person I think I would really love to know. You're a type of person that I'd really like to be, you know, friends with, have intimacy with, like, you know, these things. Not that every person, curator, writer, whatever, you're going to have that kind of relationship with, but you know, we need to be in a place where we speak to one another as individuals, as people, as full, complex, whole individuals, you know, not just...
To take that even more one step further, something that I really try my best to always say to folks, artists, this might be unpopular, and I don't mean to commodify anyone or what it is that we do. Yes, you're creatives. Yes, we're artists, but we're also entrepreneurs. And doing this stuff doesn't sound like it's a part of our practice, but if you're not thinking that this stuff is a part of your practice, I'm not going to say that you're wrong, but I think that you're missing out on a really big opportunity to expand what it is that you do and participate in making art at all moments of your life. I really feel that when I'm sending an email, it's a part of my art practice. When I'm signing a contract, it's a part of my art practice. When I'm writing a curatorial statement, it's a part of my art practice. It all feeds into the bigger picture because we're entrepreneurs. We and finding the balance between all of those things, between the making and the business and all of these things is what's key. And there's no necessarily wrong way to go about it. You can be very business oriented and very, know just enough, if you know how to light and use a camera, you're going to be a photographer. That's great. Or, you could do it the other way, but you have to recognize and find what makes you feel comfortable and also feels most true to who you want to be as an artist, and that feels most true to your practice. Yeah.
This is a great segue, I think, maybe speaking of, that these are entrepreneurial, things as well. So I do kind of want to get to some of these other points maybe, and maybe, sorry if this is not a most beautiful transition, but
they all must be beautiful transitions.
I know, I'm so sorry. There's a couple of things buttoned up within what I'm going to read and just share so that I don't really miss out, and we can kind of parse those out. But so you and I have spent some time together being frustrated by the way critiques within the institution are run, or how panels feel very buttoned up, how the after party to events always feels like where the real kind of speak and conversation that we're interested in is happening. I want to share some time together talking about where those frustrations come from. And I want the students here to also share their frustrations or not with those particular spaces. I'm tempted to stop there. I will read these two quotes, and these are kind of informing the way I'm thinking about this. So there's this project that was just released by the Underboob Commons, which is connected to Dark Study Archipelago.
You did it.
Transfer. Anyway, today they made a post. They just released this website where they're hosting various artist talks, but they write, whether public or private, our institutions have slipped into corporate models that embrace the notion that competition is the primary form of innovation. Incredibly key, I think. We are bound by a death drive to grow with more students, more new buildings, more endowments, and more student debt to prop it all up. This was our pre-existing condition when the pandemic came along, further eroding an already fragile enterprise. There's one. And then the other thing I'll just mention is this quote by Anne Boyer. Someone asked her a question, what is the biggest impediment to your writing life, your writing practice? And she responded, capitalism, which continues to devour the living world that we need as our home and to consume the hours of everyone's lives for the profit of very few, setting people against each other for the mere preservation of life and pressurizing gendered and racialized forms of oppression. There's no writing without time, without air to create, and potable water without a body and earth that supports life without each other.
A lot of feelings there. It's funny that you bring that up because I was actually just having a conversation with a publication editor sort of similar to this. And if this is actually not on topic, you let me know, Eileen.
I will.
The editor and I were talking about I'm gonna have to gender the person because otherwise it's just gonna be too difficult. She sort of posed to me the question of, I don't really do a lot of work for money, unfortunately. The 5 years that my career has not been populated by a whole lot of money. And so our conversation was sort of around how can you keep working for other people for free and with no pay? And I sort of posed back to her, I don't understand how you can cold pitch to somebody who you're then going to have to spend 2 months chasing after to make sure that the invoice gets sent to, the money gets sent to you. So there's this like unfortunate balance that's caused because of capitalism and because of money and because of this competition that some for you means less for me. And unfortunately, I don't think I really have a great answer. I just know that
well, also, I want you to finish your thought, but I also want to back up quickly. Yeah, sure. Like to begin this, because I think that these ideas of capitalism and these structures, like, I think that they are part of the structural problem with what you and I have spoken about being frustrated with, inevitably. But I think that maybe we can flesh this out more. It's just to begin with, that you and I have been frustrated by critiques within the institution, how they're run, that we're frustrated by the way certain panels are run, by the way information is kind of shared, which kind of ties back to pulling the curtain down between, oh, studio, gallery moment. That, like, can we identify where that frustration comes from, or identify what frustrates us most about it? And can any students interested in share things that frustrate them about it,
That's for all of us to answer. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that even young gallerists and young spaces and a lot of people, even who are, like our age or younger or whatever, or emerging or slightly older than us, uphold these industry standards of secretive and wanting to be in control and not wanting to be open so that they can be more focused on their missions and their goals. And I'm not sure that if any of those people were actually approached in a way that was thoughtful, in a way that was respectful, in a way that was professional, and it's also important to really acknowledge that you need to approach somebody with something that, I like to say, you don't get a yes from someone unless you make them think that it was their idea. And there's a lot of ways to go about doing that. I'll use a very personal example. The first show I curated, is the thing that has now become like my big main project, New Flesh. When I approached, so the way that happened was I had shown my work. This will show 2 examples of how I got 2 yeses. I was still an early writer. I wrote about this major figure, this major photographer, and I thought, this is cool. I'm going to share it with the chair of the department that I graduated from, who also is the editor-in-chief of this magazine, Dear Dave magazine. And showing him this article that I wrote about this pretty significant photographic figure, he asked me if I wanted to write for Dear Dave magazine. And then he said he would take it one step further, and he said you could also choose the artist or artists to be in the magazine. Now, even though I didn't ask to be in the magazine, that was a small moment that I feel is an example of how you get a yes from somebody. You present them with something that you've done, you worked very hard on it, it means something to you, and it has some sort of like momentum behind it that's both your momentum and also the momentum of who the work is about. And he let me curate and write what became the first New Flesh. The first iteration of New Flesh was in Dear Dave magazine. At the same time, I had just recently met the gallery owner of this new gallery in New York. It's called Rubber Factory. And the gallery owner, Mike Tan, and I had started this relationship. We really liked each other. We met at a bar through a mutual project. And when New Flesh was approved to be in the magazine, I went to this emerging new gallery space, this young gallery owner who had only had like 3 or 4 shows. And I said, if we act very quickly, when this magazine comes out, we could have a group show here of either the same artists or more artists and expand it, but like it would be the gallery show of New Flesh. And you'd also be you'd also be associated with this magazine, which had at the time 22 issues behind it. It was connected to the School of Visual Arts. So let's break that down. What's actually happening there is I brought an idea that had history and funding and attention and eyes to somebody who had only done like 3 projects. And I said, would you like to participate? Don't you think that would be a good idea? I think it would be a good idea. And of course he said yes. He said yes because he recognized the value of it, the significance of it, and that's that balance again. It's good work, it's creative work, it's also good business, it's all of those things. It brought all of those things together, and it was a moment where I got a yes from somebody because I made them think that it was their idea.
Well, but they also benefited from it, right?
Yeah.
And this is, I think,
from it too. It was
like all parties involved. There was a benefit for everyone involved, and this is, I think, what good collaboration looks like. And people like to say the word collaboration and just ask you to do a lot of work sometimes, and that's not what that is. And I think this is another kind of bullet point I'd written about, but talking about kind of a community, how it is built, how it is nourished, how it is fostered, how it is maintained, how it is continuous, how also like from that moment, it's, you keep up with those people. You keep up with the artists that you involve in that show, that that becomes a living ecosystem. And every time you add something to it, you have to understand how that's going to take time and care, and how it's going to benefit your system, right? How it's got to go both ways.
I just would like to share one thing that just, again, I keep piggybacking off of the things you say. It's so goddamn brilliant. I really do that, and it's very important to me. Every morning, the first thing I do is I have a glass of water and I check Facebook for birthdays, because I always every day I'm sending at least 1 to 5, depending on how many birthdays there are. I wish people happy birthday. I let people know that I'm thinking about them. I stay in touch with people. I don't just work with somebody and that was it. Thank you very much. Goodbye. I'm never going to, maybe we'll bump it. Maybe I'll see you again. I want to be an active, engaged participant with other folks. And you're right. And a community that is in everywhere, in cities, in towns, outside, in America, outside of America. I think that's something that I'm really focused on, and I really want to try to pay more attention to. Is I think that, especially being from New York, I think that there's, I'm sure it's probably similar in or near a lot of major cities. I think that folks there get really caught up in, oh, well, we're in the coolest place and everything happens here anyways, and we're really focused on that. And I don't want to throw too much shade at those folks because those people are my friends. But I think we really get lost on thinking that because we're in these places or we're connected to these places that we have our finger on the pulse. But that's not true. Just because you're in New York or you're working or you have a connection doesn't mean that anybody in Europe has a fucking clue who you are. And it's that pushing and that curiosity and that talking to other people and that making new relationships and putting yourself in these positions where you're not sure, or this is so powerful. I really believe in the power of starting relationships with people on social media. Some of my best relationships. Eileen, I know you know Anna. I befriended Anastasia Samolyova, who at the time that I befriended her on Instagram, she was like, she's still, oh my God, she's not gonna stop. She's just a machine. But at the time she was like really everywhere. She was in Phone magazine, she was having this, she was having that. And I really liked her work. And so I started following her, and for whatever reason, she started following me back. And we started this silent relationship with each other where I posted something and she liked it, and if she posted something, I liked it. And it just went like that for months and months and months. And then she gave a talk, and I went to her talk, and she ended up coming and introducing herself to me. Anna was the first artist who ever introduced themselves to me as opposed to me introducing myself to them. And it was all because we appreciated each other, we saw each other, we were working really hard and doing cool stuff, and that's how our relationship started. There are so many different ways to think about adapting these ideas and these concepts and how to approach people and things like that. That's just like...
Well, and like the thing about you and Anna too is that like you were both, you know, so we can say there's many things we can say about social media, but you are both really great at always actively sharing what you're up to and what you're working on, even if it's not a gallery thing or it's not, you know, that you're both really great at just sharing, you know, sort of what's going through your mind and what you're working on and putting these things out there. And we so often can end up living in our heads, you know, not sharing, which kind of comes back to that fear, you know, not inviting people into our deep end, not really feeling comfortable in the things that we think are so cool. Like, you know, oh, there's a little thing, Brianna, having the wrong audience for work is frustrating.
Yeah,
can we talk about that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that, Brianna? Could you take that a little bit further for me, please? For us, please?
Yeah, like if you're pitching like your ideas to a certain group of audience and they don't understand the content of something, like say you're doing an engineer project, right? And you go room full of people that have never understood anything about engineering. It would be kind of that language barrier that would be kind of frustrating if nobody can kind of relate to your work in a sense.
That's a great question. And that comes down to, I'm going to say that goes back to doing your homework. Did you do any, and I don't mean to say that this is your fault, but I would ask you, what research did you do beforehand to find out who is in your audience? Or was there a way that you could have asked a question to figure out who was in that audience? Because that's a really hard place to be in. It is, and it's a place that I've been in, and it's a place that really often yields not great success, and it's a place where failure happens regularly. But there's got to be something that audience or those people are about that you can relate to. So I'd sort of be curious to know, were you able to do research, or could you have asked those people? You know, I'm sort of curious to know more about that audience.
I guess it was, I guess in an academic sense, the environment is, some people are limited to, I guess, specific majors, and when you bring something that most people are unaware of, it kind of is hard for some people to understand it if you're using the language of that field and not more layman's terms, in a sense.
Got you. I'm not sure if there's an answer. I'm not sure there's a right answer to this question. But listening to thank you for saying that. I'm going to take it back to art. I feel confident that I can look at any art and figure out at least what I see in it. Because I like starting everything very simply. I'm going to use the word stupid, and what I mean by stupid is actually simple, but I'm going to use the word stupid, forgive me. I look at a piece of art and I think of 10 stupid words. I mean, the most base. A color, a line, something that's happening in the piece of art. There are people, how many people, or there's an object, or this, and 10 words. And I either write those words down or I try to remember them. And I think about those 10 words. And the more and more I think about those 10 words, and the more and more I say those 10 words over and over again, I start noticing that there are relationships between those words. relationships that make me think about things that are outside of the piece of art and outside of the room. And I recognize that this piece of art that I'm looking at, or this thing that I'm looking at, actually has a relationship outside of the context that maybe it was initially intended for. And I think being able to slow down in those moments when it's like there's a lot of pressure, we have to understand, or we have to relate to the people who we're talking to, or we have to understand the thing that we're standing in front of. It's good to say no and slow down and really make it simple and let it build from there, because big things have simple, tiny beginnings. And trying to identify those tiny beginnings can help us relate to that thing, and then relate to other people who are looking at that thing, and so on and so on and so on. And it just sort of builds from there. You build your own momentum in that sort of way, but by starting really simply, really, really simply. And also really allowing yourself to like look like an idiot. My mentor, his name is Bill Hunt. He likes to talk to people as they enter into a room, or talk to people on a Zoom call before the talk starts, so that he can sort of like, if he makes himself look like an idiot a little bit, or starts to make himself a little bit more comfortable with everybody else, it makes everybody more comfortable. So again, I mean, I think that was a lot that I just threw at you, and I apologize. But I think that there's like a lot of different ways to go about it.
I want to piggyback off of that a little bit. There's a couple of things.
I'm sorry, Eileen. I just wanted to make, Brianna, how was that? Was that okay? Was that?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
I want to support like the concerns that they're sharing, though, because I think that like this is maybe tied to my initial questions of the institutional critique, and I'm so thankful that you're speaking about all of these things in the application of the world that you and I currently exist in. But I want to bring it back down to the world that I and these students share within this academic space, just for a moment, because. And then I want to talk about some strategies for how we reimagine or rethink or hold space for a different kind of critique. Because I think more often than not, when work that is not a type of work that people are used to approaching, or let me rephrase it, when it's not, I don't want to say when it's not easy work, because I'm not trying to say anything good or bad about different types of work, but that there's often not as much space held for things that are more different, and that people get really afraid to approach them, or just lazy and decide not to, or think that they can't. And I think that a lot of these students are pretty used to, as am I. I mean, I grew up in the environment of the phoenix flying out of the burning fire metaphor. So the idea of the institutional critique is that if we continue to just kind of pummel you and break you and say that you're wrong and tell you it's not working and hold no space for support, and not be angels who are curious and willing to say stupid things or start simply, instead it's just like, no, and that if we continue to break you and squeeze you, eventually you'll get it, and you'll make work from a new, really raw space, and you'll be the phoenix flying out of the fire of the institutional belly, and we will have done our job, and you will have made great work. And I believe that there's a different way to do this, and I think that it takes so much of just the first step of affirming that you attempted something, that there is a mess or a thing, and that we need to notice, right? And we don't give this type of language to our students or to our faculty or to anybody. And
we're not growing the person, we're growing the shit that you put on the wall, which, okay, but like the person is making the shit that's on the wall.
Well, and that whatever it might look like, that it comes from an impulse, and that we need to identify that impulse together, or at least acknowledge it, and acknowledge that it has a voice and a shape and a texture and a way, and we do that through looking at the work and through investigating the work, right? by asking those questions, by being curious. And I'm gonna stop because I feel very passionate about this and I get very upset. But like, what does critique through affirmation look like? What does critique through, you know?
Can I share a video?
Absolutely, whatever.
We're going to need to talk some more about it, but I think that this is the perfect moment to share this.
Great.
This is my mentor who's starting to sell his collection, and he's talking about some of the work. And I think that one of the things that I appreciate most about Bill is exactly what we're talking about here. That there are these rules, and we acknowledge those rules, but how do we get beyond those rules or recognize that those rules need to be ripped inside out?
Well, and who are those rules built for, and who do they serve, and who do they not serve?
Well, this video won't help with that regard, but it'll start us in the right direction, I think, in the ways I hope. So here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my computer. Oh, no, I closed it. Oops. Hang on. I'm going to stop sharing for 2 seconds. Because it's probably going to take me a second to find it again. Damn it. I opened it up and everything. Oh, there it is. Ha 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 ha. Okay.
Tell me when you want to do it. 18. Overwhelmingly now, photographs are good. People just make good photographs. That's not interesting to me. I'm interested in great photographs. I've been a collector for a long time. You're a collector when you go home and you have to take something down to put the new thing up. In time, I became a teacher, and the thing that I teach is how to look. And I think you learn how to look by doing a lot of looking and paying attention to yourself, how you react to things. Why do I like this? You get to the point where you go like, you really don't need to know what other people think about pictures. They're really most interested in knowing what I think about pictures. If you have a really strong visceral response to something, it's really meaningful. You want the picture and you want to dance around the room where you just take it off the wall and you go, this is mine, because this really speaks to me. You're sure now, because this one is the left. Okay, ready? I haven't done it yet. Now I did it. I don't know, I didn't see you put it in there. All right. The photograph I have in front of me right now, this is the best photograph ever made, ever in the world. This is it. It's these two ladies, and for me, that they have the secrets of the world, and that if you can know these ladies, then you will know the secrets of the world. The thing about this print too is that if you get closer, you can then see their faces. So the print itself, you pull it up close to your face and you look at it, it just explodes into this constellation of silvers and has this whole other existence as a beyond being a representation that's very successful. This is an image by Bill Brandt. This is Dubuffet's right eye. And Brandt had done a series of portraits of artists' eyes. This is the best one. Somehow this is like the center of the universe. This in the collection, one of the most moving pictures. There's so many things in the collection that I seem to have been meant to see. I think that the way great pictures behave is that they They beckon you. I think that the collection's incredibly cool and thoughtful and varied, because there's something non-canonical about it. It's not an academic collection. It's really about looking at all kinds of photographs. If I could say something to the photographers in the collection, I'd say thank you. It's amazing. That's so personal and unique for me, but it's a real way of looking and of discovering and experiencing photographs that is pretty singular. So I'm really proud of that. Great photographs have two things. They have balance and they have secrets. And when all of that works, I'm on board.
Cute.
Really quick before I move on, I want to, like, that quote, great photographs have balance and they have secrets. Next week or the week after on our syllabus, the week is titled Secrets, and the title of this class is Everybody Has Secrets, That's Why You're Here. Just as a side note.
There's a great Robert Frost's poem that says, we dance round and round, but the secret, something like that. We dance round and round, but the secret sits in the middle and knows, or something like that. I'm slaughtering it. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to get it. I'm also going to talk over it like an idiot so that there's no empty space here. So here it is. We dance round and round in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. That thing that sits in the middle is what we're after, what we're trying to say, what we're trying to make. How we're trying to find it is all around here, and it's sitting there waiting for us to find it. And the thing that we're trying to find is the thing that we're trying to make, but it's also really us. The thing that we're trying to make is us, or who we represent, or who we want to represent, or who we want to speak to. It starts so simply that it just builds and builds and builds.
Well, and like, I also want to say that this, what you're talking about, there's a thing and we do this, that this is what our friendship is built on, that this is what all good relationships
Two Floridians saying that this is what our relationship is built on is saying that hurricanes is what our relationship is built on.
That that like we are constantly together, you and I, returning to and running, circling around ideas. And this is important, I think, because that's true at that level. It's true at the level of what I think a community, which I think can be a classroom, can do with each other in helping someone else, one of their peers or their classmates, discover what they're doing. You know, that we need to actually, like, what if we removed this binary of success and failure and the work is or is not doing, and we replaced it with this, you know, and came to class or came to critique always ready to be relentlessly moving around that circle with someone and saying, are we getting closer? How does it feel to this week? You know, what is it this week? Have we found a secret this week? You know, and then again on the next level, that's what our practices are, like you said.
I think that we need to be as rewarded by the success of someone else as the success of ourselves. You know, and I think that does start in the classroom. I think that one of the things that also that currently starts in the classroom is this, like, cutthroat. I have to be better than you. I have to be doing better than you. It has to be clearer than you. And we're not excited about that. Even when I'm critiquing you, Eileen, I'm learning about myself. And when you're critiquing me, you're also learning about yourself. You know, that's totally taken for granted. That's the work that we have to do. That when I say, you know, we need to learn how to also work on ourselves, not just the work. That's what I'm talking about. I don't think that when I'm critiquing someone else's work that there's not something for me to gain so that I can learn about the work that I want to make.
This is
or how I'm seeing the world, or how I'm looking at the world. You know, like Bill said, you know, looking is so important, and it's feeding us. It's feeding us.
Well, and I think what's great about that video is that, like, I don't have to agree with Hunt about what he's saying. Like this, you know, he's like, this is the best photograph in the world. And I'm like, I disagree. But what I love to sit next to him and talk through the image with that kind of intention and curiosity, which is me trying to learn about myself, about the work, about him, all of us together in this moment, that there's real intention and attention there. Mary Ruefle has this quote. She has this book of lectures that I refer back to always. It's where our secret text comes from in a couple of weeks. And she says, look, when I read a poem, like I come to that poem prepared to die. Kill me, like ruin me. I am ready. I'm ready. And so if you're going to give me something that isn't meeting me there, like, no, I'm, you know, whatever. But like that if we could all take on that when we come to work, you know, to look at work, to look at each other's work, that we could, if we could maybe come to even each other and each other's interests with that kind of, even a little bit of that kind of energy.
Because great is going to adapt to the person who's looking at it, you know, and what's great for you is going to help me recognize what's great for me. What Bill thinks is great is helping me recognize, yeah, he and I do this, we participate in this website, Eileen, I'm sure you know it, you're on it. We do a New Nothing, which is a purely photo-driven conversation where one person posts a photograph and then the partner has to post a photograph that somehow speaks to the, and it goes on and on and on like that. And he was giving a presentation one time to a class of like 30 people, and he invited me to come, and he said in the class in front of everybody, I really don't like most of Efrem's pictures. And I was crushed at first. But when I went home, I realized, fuck him, because I really don't like his photographs either. But it's not about that. You know, it's not about whether we like the photographs or not. That's not doing anything or anyone any favors. How photographs and how art speaks to other art is how we all grow together. And what's so interesting to me about specifically Bill and I having a conversation on A New Nothing is how so many different artists and so many different types of work and so much time comes together in those moments. And we can disagree and we can agree and we can, however we feel, the progression of it. And the progression of us as artists also, you know.
I think that this is important too, because like you and Hunt have really different opinions about work, different interests, different likes, right? And I think some of the frustrations being shared or some of the things are like, you know, you are building off that. You're building off your difference, you're acknowledging it, and you're being curious about it. And more often than not, in certain spaces, that's not happening. Instead, it's like, well, I just can't speak about this. This wasn't made for me. It wasn't made from my perspective. It's not something I understand. So like, I'm out. I guess you could change it in these ways and it would then please me, which is just not any way to speak.
Yeah, we need to adapt.
Yes.
That ability to recognize that, okay, that's not my reality, but that is the other person's reality, and being able to slip into that deep end, that uncertainty. I love how everything just becomes everything else. It's really so wonderful. What you're talking about is another form of accepting that that other person's perspective is a deep end that you can either choose to engage with or you can choose to feel that it's foreign because it's not familiar to you, or you can get excited. And we need to get excited. We need to get excited about the things that aren't familiar to us, that are strange to us, or seem strange to us, because it's not strange to another person. It's not strange to another person. And embracing that concept of strangeness and not giving it a value, good or bad or whatever. Getting excited is the roller coaster. Take the ride. Buy the ticket and take the ride.
I do want to touch on a thought though, which is that some people have expended far more energy getting excited about everybody's work. And then there are a lot of people that haven't really spent that kind of energy. And I want to acknowledge that exhaustion. And I want to acknowledge that not everyone comes to it this way, you know, and that maybe some part of what you're saying, what I often say to some people, it hits and it's like, listen, I've been showing up for everyone forever. And now no one's coming over here. No one's showing up for me in these ways. I feel entirely unseen. I feel entirely unheard. And that's a product of many things. But I think the way I feel I can begin to change some of that is by attempting to put some language to how we hold space in this differently. And this is what we're talking about. You know, I just want to put that there, right? It's a large part of everything right now.
No, and I think that's really so. Thank you for saying that. I want to go back to saying though that also, you know, we are so trained. We are so trained to not want to be ourselves, to not want to affirm ourselves, to think that, you know, if what we think is different from what everyone else is thinking, what everyone else is thinking, that we should just keep our mouths shut. That comes back to the ask. We need to encourage each other and ourselves to ask more, and be polite about it. To go and find and seek out those people, or seek out that thing that we feel that's missing, and to pursue it. And to also a huge part of this comes also down to, you really need to fall in love with being disliked as much as falling in love with being liked. That's so important.
Hell yeah.
That's really, really, really important. It's so important to be able to really, I know that sounds crazy. I know that it sounds like easier said than done, or like convenient or whatever, but oh man.
Well, and I also don't I think, you know, I want to acknowledge the privilege in being able to say that you and I sit in comfortable spaces of being able to be disliked, and that is very real. But I think what we're encouraging, and I've been working on this myself a lot, because I am doing a lot of things in a different way than they are normally done. Not that it's that radical or that different, but by doing them in these ways, I often feel really terrible, and I don't feel liked or affirmed, and I feel like I'm floating in outer space alone, and I'm never going to bump into the wall, and I'm going to keep going, and no one's going to join me. This was like the fear, right? And having to be able to find a pleasure sensation within that difference, or that aloneness, or that type of rejection, or that the way that people communicate with me sometimes, no matter how sweet I am, just sucks, is like part of it, right? But today I had a moment where the way that someone communicated to me, I felt that I knew a truth and I was correct about this thing. And even though they were super rude to me about it, I felt really good because I stood up for myself and who I am and what I'm doing, you know. And then this is, you know, is what, yeah.
I'd really like to, I actually never asked you this. How long is this class?
Yeah, does anyone need a break? We have until, we have until 4:45 Central Time, 5:45 Eastern Time.
I was actually, that's very nice of you. I'm not that nice. I was going to say if anybody wants to ask a question, but if you need a break, I think that's important too. But why don't we do, you want to do a break and then questions?
Let's have a 5-minute break. And then I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let you all engage. And please also, if you're frustrated by things we're saying or annoyed or things aren't resonating, share that. If they are, whatever, take 5 minutes to really like sit with this, and then we'll return.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Efrem. Hi, everyone. So I want to take this moment to let you all know I'm going to stop recording now. I'm going to do that so that you all feel like you can really engage freely with Efrem as excitedly, angrily, tiredly, however you'd like to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that now. You don't have to turn your videos back on, but if you would like to,